Hi, everyone, and welcome to what I normally talk about in the first internship workshop. What I normally talk about is how to figure out objectives for what you want to learn for this semester, social networking, and professionalism at a job. So, one of the things that you want to think about with your job is social media. Now, you can absolutely make the choice to not use social media, but you have to make sure that you're making an educated decision about why you're not using it. You don't want to just say, I'm not using it because. If you're going to be using social media, you also want to think about how to use social media so that it benefits you the best. So, the first thing that we should look at is the different types of social media. Now, I usually like to use the donut analogy, but there are a lot of others out there. The idea is we want to look at the different social media options that are out there and figure out which one fits us best. Now, there's some examples like for Pinterest. Here's a recipe for making donuts. Pinterest is actually not just used for recipes, there's other things you can do with it. However, if you're coming at this from a tech perspective with a tech job, that's probably not going to be the best place to concentrate your efforts. That's not somewhere that people are going to probably be looking for somebody to be a network admin. However, if we look at something like LinkedIn, my skills include eating donuts. That's a professional social media network that's completely focused on work. So, people that are hiring are going to look there, people that are looking for jobs are going to look there. And when you look at a social media profile, in the case of LinkedIn, it's actually going to read very much like a resume. What are you able to do? What skills do you have? What previous jobs have you had? And it's a way for you to be able to showcase what you can do and then share it with people that are looking for that. Now, it's actually not always that straightforward. One of the things that I actually found really interesting is Twitter is actually incredibly popular in information security circles. Not completely sure why they picked Twitter, but they did. And so there's actually a lot of people that are very well known in the information security community that spend a lot of time on Twitter, and people that will post jobs to Twitter. They all get to know other people in the industry from Twitter. A lot of the conferences, especially now that we've moved online, will do a lot of their advertisements on Twitter. And so, if you were going to, for example, get into the information security field, I actually recommend that you get a Twitter account and you set aside a little bit of time every day or every other day and go look through it. Follow people in the industry, see what's going on, what skills are coming up, what companies are hiring, all of that kind of stuff. So, that's sort of a little bit of an idea about social media and how to pick which one is going to work best for you. Now, one of the things that you want to think about when we talk about social media is think before you post. For some people, social media is something that you have grown up with, so you are very used to posting everything that comes to your mind. And that's not really something that I would recommend, especially from a business perspective. What I would recommend if you're looking at this from you want to get a job or you want to get some recognition in industry is you should think about what you're posting and when you're posting it so you can take the most advantage of the time that you are putting in here. Now, for some people, they will use social media in different ways. For example, I have a Twitter. I use it when I go to security conferences. I connect to other people in the security field. And I've actually gotten some really good benefits out of my Twitter. However, most of what I post on Twitter is tech news for my students. So I don't really care about optimal posting times the same way because it doesn't really matter to me to have, thousands of followers. I use Twitter as a way of being able to share tech news in class and then point people to the articles if they would like to see the articles and learn more. If, however, you're trying to get a bigger following, find more people to connect to, it's worth thinking about when the optimal posting times are. When do people use Twitter versus when do people use Facebook? When do people use Pinterest versus when do people use LinkedIn? So, for example, people probably use Pinterest before bed, as in they're scrolling and adding things to their boards, versus Facebook and Twitter, people are more likely to use that in the sort of after lunch slump. Now, one of the things that you want to think about is what it is that you are actually posting. Are you posting articles? Are you interacting with people? Are you sort of saying what you want to say in the right way? And you want to think about all of those things as you are creating your posts. Now, I have some bad examples and some good examples. If you can't see this because it's too small or whatever, totally fine. My bad examples are examples of people using social media and not doing a good job of it. Now, I don't necessarily mean not doing a good job like, they are not posting anything other than pictures of naiad cats. I mean, they're not doing a good job, as in, they don't really understand how the media form works and they're putting their foot in it pretty badly and publicly. For example, one of the ones that I have up here is a tweet from DiGiorno Pizza. So it's this like frozen pizza company. And they took over a hashtag. It was hashtag why I stayed. And their entire tweet was hashtag why I stayed. You had pizza. Now, on the face of it, that might not seem that weird, but if you know what the why I stayed hashtag is, you would know that this hashtag actually relates to domestic violence. And a bunch of people that were in violent partnerships used this hashtag to explain why they were unwilling or unable to leave that relationship even though it was violent. So that's not really an appropriate place for somebody to say you had pizza. Now, there's a lot of other examples of this as well. Sometimes they can be a little bit more subtle, like, for example, one of mine here is Urban Outfitters. The tweet says, "This storm blows, but free shipping doesn't, today only," and hashtagged it with Frankenstorm. Now, this was during Hurricane Sandy when there was a lot of property damage, people being hurt and dying. That's not really a great look to advertise free shipping. Another thing that sometimes people will do on social media is they don't necessarily realize that social media is as public as it is. For example, several people have actually lost jobs because they posted something on their social media either completely publicly or to their friends, but they didn't check the privacy settings right. And they shared things that they shouldn't have shared. For example, one person said, "Ooh, I start this, swear, job tomorrow," with a bunch of thumbs downs. Now, that's not really the kind of thing that you're going to want to post on your social media because that's basically screaming that you don't actually want the job that you're starting and you're going to talk behind people's backs while you're at your job. And that's really not a good look for anybody to have. So it's really important that when you are posting on social media, you are paying attention to what's going on. If you're going to hashtag, make sure you understand what the hashtag is used for and make sure that you aren't saying something completely tone deaf. Now, I've used mostly innocent examples here. There's a lot more bad examples out there. And I'm sure if you searched for 2 minutes, you'd be able to find other ones. But these are just a small sample of basically things you don't want to do. Now, let's look at some things that you do want to do. One of the things that you can always do on social media and professionalism is be encouraging to others. For example, you could praise somebody else. You could share an interesting article about where you work or the industry that you're in. You could share a good article about your community. You could share something that you are doing in your community that you're really excited about. So, you can look at things like articles of interest. You could share professional accomplishments. You could share somebody else's professional accomplishments and praise for them. You want to be a little bit careful. When you're sharing your own accomplishments, don't brag. When you're sharing things at work, don't violate NDAs. But in general, you can't really go too wrong praising somebody else for doing a good job. Wow, I'm so excited about this new thing that my colleague is doing. Come check this out. Oh, this is so cool. My company is doing X. I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. Come check this out, type of thing. So, being sort of a bit of a cheerleader for others is one of the ways that you could post. People like it if you say nice things about other people. Now, we also want to look at professional communications. This is something that can be really easy to gloss over, but you want to think about all the communications that are public and with your potential company as ways to be able to show how well you can communicate. For example, if you are going to be sending an email to somebody, you want to make sure that you have a subject. You want to make sure that the subject is related, and you want to proofread your email. So, the example that I have is an email. These were examples that I wrote, so I'm not picking on anybody or anything. So, the example in the upper right hand corner is to a teacher. The email address is very unprofessional. It's Tequila Monster. It has no subject. And the email says, Yo, you plus me should talk. I need a recommendation, spelled incorrectly, by the way. Capital R, capital U, free in 10. Now, this is a very obvious example of many things that have gone wrong, but it's important that you have an email address that isn't embarrassing. You want to have probably your name or your first name, last name, something like that in there. Don't put birthdays, don't put birth years. If you have a hobby that's cool, probably doesn't belong in your email. Keep it to something a lot more professional. You want to make sure you have a subject that is related to the thing that you are talking about. And you want to make sure that you spell check it. This is not an opportunity to use text speak in any ways. You want to use full sentences. For example, if you want to have somebody be a reference for you or a recommendation, things that you need to do. You need to ask them if they are willing to be. You would probably be surprised at the amount of people that just list somebody as a reference without ever actually asking the person. This happens to me all the time. You want to make sure that you're actually asking, and I have my good example here. Hi, Professor. I am planning on applying for an IT help desk position at a local company. I was wondering if it would be all right to list you as a reference. If so, can I send you my most recent resume along with a link to the job description and company website for your convenience? I am really excited for this opportunity and I appreciate your consideration. Signature. This is an example of a really good email. You have a subject requesting a reference for a job opportunity. You are asking before listing. You are offering to share the resume and the job description so that they know exactly what they're recommending you for. And you have a nice thank you at the end. So, this is an example of a really good email. And I'm not necessarily saying that you can't have informal emails, but you should start with formal and then only go more informal as you get to know people and know that they are okay with you doing that. LinkedIn is one of the ones that I always recommend my interns sign up for because it's one of the good ways that you can get your name out there and have people come to you with job offers rather than you going to the people. So, one of the things that can sometimes be challenging for jobs is feeling like you're just sending your resume into a black hole. But if you do something like LinkedIn and mark it as you are looking for a job, people are going to come to you. So you want to think about who you're following. You want to think about what you're putting on your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a way to give more details if the resume has interested them. I always recommend that you put your LinkedIn URL on your resume so that they can learn more about you if they're interested. LinkedIn can have more details than a resume. So we all know that resumes are one page only. LinkedIn can be more than that. You can also do things like update it more frequently. If you are a part of anything at work, finished projects, certs, you can add all of those to your LinkedIn as well. And then you want to think about who you are connecting to on LinkedIn. You want to connect to people that you work with. Now, different people will have different points of view. Some people will connect to any and everyone. Some people are very choosy and will only connect to people that they have worked directly with. Some people will only connect with people that they would be willing to recommend for a job. None of these are wrong. These are all just different ways that you can look at it, and you need to figure out what works best for you and what makes the most sense for you. I always recommend that people go to social networking events normally in person, however, right now, obviously online. Part of what you can get by going to these different events is you can connect with people in your industry. One of the things that can sometimes be a struggle when you're in school is you hear a lot about what your professors think, what our opinions are, where we think industry is going, because, part of our job is keeping track of that. However, my personal point of view is that it's important that you have other people's opinions than just my own. And so going to events, meeting people in industry, and getting more points of view is a really good way to do that. It's a good way to make connections. You never know where the connections are going to take you. Now, you can connect to other people in your classes. That can actually be a really good way of building your social network. Maybe one of them is getting hired at a company and they need 5 more people. You don't know until you talk to them. There is a sort of corollary caution to go with this. Don't talk to people because you want something from them. Talk to people because you are interested in talking to the person. Don't treat everything as I want something from you. That's always going to go bad. Um, but it's worth thinking about talking to others, making connections, and seeing if you can, keep up with other people from your class, your workplace, your field, things like that. There's social networking events online now. A lot of places have moved to that. Once we are allowed to do things in person, then you're going to see some events in different companies will sponsor them. There's things like, Meetup, Facebook, LinkedIn events. Your local Chamber of Commerce probably has events. There are some websites like Eventbrite who completely focus on having events that you could potentially go to. Your school is probably going to have events that you're interested in, and these are all good practice at the social networking portion of finding a job and getting ready to find your next job. Now, for social networking, you want to make sure that you can introduce yourself, make a graceful exit, and follow up. These are important skills to have. There's not really a quick way to do this, you just sort of have to practice. And normally in class, I would have an in class activity, but obviously that's not going to happen right now. So if you have any questions, please let me know.